What if I told you love just isn't enough to make a marriage last? Today, we're going to dig into a movement called the Covenant Family Reboot. And their whole idea, it's that the secret isn't just loving your partner. It's about actively training for the relationship.
Okay, so right at the heart of this whole thing is a really bold claim. They say most couples aren't failing because they don't love each other. Now, think about that for a second. That completely flips the script on the usual reasons we hear for why relationships fall apart.
So, all right, if it's not a lack of love, then what is the real reason? That's the big question, right? It's the launching pad for this whole Covenant Family Reboot idea. And you know what? Their answer is surprisingly simple.
And here it is. They say the core problem has nothing to do with feelings or affection. Nope. It all comes down to skill. Or, more specifically, a total lack of training.
This basically reframes marriage as a craft, something you have to learn. The main argument is that most of us jump into this massive commitment without any kind of instruction manual on how to actually build the thing and keep it from falling apart.
So what does this training even look like? Well, the movement breaks it down into 4 key areas, where they say couples are just totally unprepared. First up, learning how to surrender daily. Then there's knowing how to fight spiritually, not just emotionally. Third is building your relationship on what they define as biblical behaviors. And last, it's about actively avoiding what they call worldly habits.
Let's dig into that spiritual fighting idea for a minute, because it's pretty interesting. They draw this really clear line in the sand. On one side, you've got your typical fight, what they call emotional fighting. The goal there? It's to win the argument. It's all about your feelings. But on the other side, with spiritual fighting, the goal is completely different. It's about building the marriage by focusing on the covenant, the promise you made. That's a huge shift in why you're even having a disagreement in the first place.
Okay, so if the problem is a lack of training, then what's the solution? Well, that's where the Covenant Reboot movement comes in. It was literally designed to fill that exact gap.
And this quote right here, it really nails the kind of person they're talking to. It's for people who are just done guessing. They feel like they've been winging it, and now they're ready for a real, structured plan.
Now, it's super important to get what this is and what it isn't. They're very, very clear about this. This is not counseling. It's not therapy.
And it's not motivational content either. It's not just a bunch of feel-good speeches to get you hyped up. They make a really sharp distinction there.
So, if it's not counseling and it's not motivation, then what in the world is it? They call it discipleship for marriage. Think of it like this. It frames marriage as a skill that you have to learn through daily practice, almost like an apprenticeship. The whole point is to build very specific, repeatable habits that are rooted in their view of a biblical covenant relationship.
All right, so that's the big idea, the philosophy. But how does it actually work in the real world? Let's get into the nuts and bolts of this discipleship model. The whole thing is built around 2 main courses, and apparently you can do them right on your phone. You've got a 6-week course for couples who are engaged, and then there's a slightly longer 8-week one for couples who are already married. And this really gets to a key part of their strategy. It's all about prevention, not repair. The idea is to give you the tools to build a solid foundation before things go wrong, instead of trying to patch everything up after a crisis hits. And here's a peek at what they actually teach. The skills are super practical, very action-oriented. We're talking about things like how to communicate without being contemptuous, how to rebuild trust and intimacy, and this one's really interesting, how to spot and stop those negative patterns that get passed down from one generation to the next.
And this isn't just some theory in a book. To show that it's being used out in the world, the source material says that over 100 pastors are actually using this exact process with couples in their churches. So it seems like it's being put into practice at the community level.
So all of this leads up to their ultimate goal, their big vision. Let's look at the final piece of the puzzle, what it actually means to build an intentional covenant.
Their whole philosophy can really be boiled down to this powerful 3-part mantra. It kicks off with this foundational belief. Covenant families don't happen by accident.
And that's followed by the core action you have to take. They are built intentionally. That word right there, intentionally, is basically the engine driving this whole movement. And it wraps up with the how. The method behind that intention, they have to be trained biblically and surrendered daily. So there you have it. Those 3 things, being intentional, getting trained, and surrendering daily, are the absolute pillars of their entire approach. So let's end where the movement itself leaves things, with a big question. The Covenant Family Reboot doesn't frame the choice as being between a good or a bad marriage. No, they frame it as a choice between just surviving your marriage and actively building something designed to thrive.
And that really leaves you with something to think about, doesn't it? In any long-term partnership, is just surviving really enough?